We are live on the Gooner Fanzine Arsenal Woman TV YouTube channel. We thought for a while there wasn't going to be a lot to talk about from Arsenal Women against Juventus in the Champions League, as Arsenal sealed their passage into the quarterfinals, but they got there in the end. Lena Hurtig, well, she tried her best to not send Arsenal through with that header that she put over the bar, but then Juventus and have to say Lenzini, I think it was, on the goal line, not clearing the ball away, and Hurtig won't have scored many easier goals in her life. But Arsenal, Daisy, get the job done. They are into the quarterfinals. We'll have some more European away trips, but they were made to work for it tonight by a very stern Juventus defence.
Yeah, absolutely. I did get a little bit scared towards the end. I started figuring out what we'd need from that final match, come Bayern game. But no, I mean, I thought obviously Juventus much better in that game than I thought in the previous one. Really good defensively. I thought even on the attack they were quite good. When they got to the final third, a bit like Arsenal, they were a bit lackluster, but they were winning battles all over the pitch, and they really did make Arsenal work for it. I think in terms of having played so many fixtures, maybe looking a little bit tired in certain areas, a few players really not there today, really. I think there was a slightly off at times. The midfield, I thought, looked a little bit leggy at times as well. We've said this in some games where we've said, Little and Volti have been fantastic. And then the next game, they seem a bit tired, maybe playing 2 fixtures a week. But yeah, a couple of players maybe not at their best, but a result is a result, and we did it in the end. So we've got to take that, I guess.
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday, didn't we? Almost the lack of rotation and the benefits of the fact that Renee Slegers doesn't almost have to think long term like a permanent manager would. And if that's, if she does get the job, at least to the end of the season, that's something she's going to have to look at a little bit more. And yeah, I think you make a good point. I know Saturday and Thursday, probably in modern football, it feels like quite a lot of time between games, but there were definitely a few players who, did look a little bit leggy, going unchanged from Tottenham to Juventus, and I think Arsenal probably deserved to win it. I won't take that away from them, but I think if it was 0-0, I don't think there would have been many complaints. But then, Juventus have drawn a couple of good saves from Van Domselaar. The one in the second half, I gave him my player of the match on the player ratings, actually, because it's a third clean sheet in a row for the Dutch goalkeeper. And you wrote in your piece the other day about Renee Slegers and some of the players who sort of flourished under her. Van Domselaar seems to have taken that number 1 spot at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked towards the start of the season in general, with Van Domselaar coming in, maybe there'd be some rotation. Obviously, we did see Zinsberg come in for the Brighton game, but in terms of those big games and those big moments where you have your number 1 coming in, I do really think Van Domselaar has made that point very clear. The one thing that I said I wanted to sort of see more from her was being a bit more vocal, coming out from corners. I thought Arsenal did a little bit better from defending corners, having recent games. But in terms of her overall confidence on the ball, I mean, her distribution is good. She comes out when she's needed from crosses in general. And obviously, yeah, the saving, I think, obviously is one of her strengths. I think we talked about this when we brought her in. I wrote a little piece about her, and I said, that was one of her strengths that I'd noticed, was her ability to, save in those big moments. And I think Arsenal have done quite well in keeping clean sheets. And if you think about it, another clean sheet today, so not too much to talk about defensively, really. And another, I thought, quite solid performance, really. There was moments maybe where certain players were off it, but overall, I do think, that was a good defensive shift from everybody, including Van Domselaar.
Just looking at the Gooner Fanzine Twitter, 9,963 in attendance, which on a night where everyone was saying is absolutely freezing. I mean, I'm covering it from home and I can feel the cold drifting in through the windows, but by all accounts, the Emirates was absolutely Baltic there tonight. So again, that's a notable crowd that Arsenal have been able to draw in for a midweek game. And obviously that's the last Champions League game at the Emirates for a while now, with the Bayern game being moved. But yeah, it's interesting we talk about Van Domselaar, because comparing her to Pauline Perrault-Maignan, I thought the whole game, under high balls, under crosses, she looked really shaky. And obviously Leah Williamson put that free header wide where Perrault-Maignan was nowhere to be seen. And then the late chance for Lena Hurtig from the bench. We've talked about her a couple of times, and one thing we've always seen for her, particularly for Sweden, is that aerial threat. And obviously she put 2 headers wide from close range, but just to offer that different dimension, it's obviously a great cameo because she scored. Maybe it's not so great if she doesn't, because she, it might well go down as a bit of a sitter that she put wide. But you've got to be, getting yourself in and around the penalty area, and comparing that to that forward ball that was slipped across goal and Russo didn't even sort of commit onto it. That's the sort of substitute appearance that we want to see from Lena Hurtig.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've discussed Lena Hurtig. We're not quite sure where she might fit in. We did mention, obviously, maybe having more of a role when the fixtures, get a little bit, you get more fixtures, we play in more competitions. But in terms of impact from the bench, I do think that she has the potential to do that. I mean, we've seen her do that before, the few times that she has come off the bench. I do think that it was definitely part of the tactics, having watched Leah, drifting over to that right-hand side, floating balls into the box. I think that was tried on 2-3 occasions. One went wide, one was a bit of a, like you say, a sitter, and then obviously the one that she was in the right place at the right time for that ball, that when we scored the goal. So I do think it was definitely tactically, using that, and that's not even talking about the header that she scored obviously against Brighton. So clearly that is playing to her strengths, and it seemed like that was definitely part of the reason she came on. I think maybe that's one of the things that Renee was looking for, maybe something different. We've seen, like you say, Arsenal try and drive into the box, and maybe that last decision a little bit not so good today. But yeah, I think it was something different, and I like that. It wasn't just the same substitutions with the same ideas, all the way throughout the game. I think that's really been a strength under Renee that we've kind of enjoyed, is that switching up, and it is that versatility, and Arsenal not always being so predictable. I mean, in certain games we've definitely changed it up when we've needed to, so we've got to take that as a huge positive during this Renee Slegers era, really.
Yeah, I do agree. Sort of less predictable substitutions today, actually.
Yeah.
You look at Mead and Blackstenius coming on, and then, being prepared to take off someone like Russo, who I just don't think was at her best today. And, there were some bright sparks. I think Frida Marnham, the fact that she is so often in the right place at the right time, a lot of Arsenal's attacks seem to come through her at the moment. And obviously she had a couple of efforts that were just wide in the first half and the second half. There's yet another one where Pedro Magnan's tipped it over the bar, and the referee said it's a goal kick. And the exact same happened in Italy last week from that Emily Fox shot, and the ref put in a great tackle again on Alessia Russo too. So Juventus have had a bit of assistance when they've wanted it from the woman in the middle. But what did you make of Arsenal's overall attacking threat? Because, a couple of people were tweeting me saying it's a bit of a Jonas Eidevall replacement. And I spoke about it last week and saying that actually when things go well, we give Renee the credit. And then when they don't go so well, we say, well, it's, she was with Jonas Eidevall for however long. This felt like more of one of those nights. But the fact, again, that Arsenal got the job done, sometimes on nights like these, especially in the Champions League. And when you look back to how badly Arsenal started this competition, they're through with 2 games to spare, and 2 difficult games, because Bayern have drawn at Vålerenga. We've said the whole time how difficult it will be to go there. And then obviously you end it against Bayern Munich. To now be in a considerable chance of actually winning the group, because, if Bayern have dropped points and maybe they've not been quite at their best, and you give yourself a chance, and, we're in quite an exciting position. And now it's the international break as well, a chance to take a breath.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be criticism, and I think it's completely valid to look maybe at that, Renee being under Jonas, and when things don't go right, you're looking for who to blame and who to point the finger at. I think in this specific game, I do think you've got to put it to a better Juve performance in general. I think they were a lot better than I saw in the previous game, especially defensively. And comparing that to the Tottenham game, I thought Tottenham were miles off in every single pass that Arsenal made. I thought Juve were on Arsenal a lot, forcing them backwards, and I think that really played to their advantage in just keeping it 0-0 for so long. And I think if we're looking, obviously, like you say, compare that to the 5-2 that we sat here and reviewed, where we just couldn't really fathom that had happened. Like I say, there's so many positives that she's obviously worked on. I think defensively, that we don't talk about that enough. Like, that is huge to succeeding in competitions, keeping clean sheets, staying switched on in games like this. And she talks so much in these press conferences, which I think, like we said, she's done fantastic in, at these small margins. And these are the games that maybe under Jonas would have ended 0-0 and we would have been frustrated. And it's those things that she's obviously worked on. Maybe it went in our favour, but we also pushed to the very end. And like I say, she changed things up. It was different. We were versatile. And yeah, maybe not as strong a performance as we've seen, but we have talked about opponents backing down to Arsenal recently. And I don't think Juve did that tonight at all. And it's obviously going to be a tougher test for Arsenal than, Juve had something to play for as well. They knew they were out of the competition if they didn't win. Maybe a little bit different to the opponents that we faced recently. But in terms of an attacking sense, I do think at times maybe a little bit like the old Arsenal. I hate to say that, but there was moments where like Caitlin Ford one really frustrated me. I thought we've been doing a lot of passing to get to the goal, but this time we've actually recently been taking shots on. Today I thought we were still doing the same thing and the shot was missing. So it's those little things. I mean, I do still feel very confident in what's going on with what's being built here, but it really does depend, doesn't it, on what happens next. And obviously that's a huge sort of turning point in the rest of the season.
Yeah, a case of just getting the job done. But as we say, 4 clean sheets in a row. And obviously the commentator again was talking about the failure to break down low blocks, and maybe that was sort of more of a long-term issue on the owner side of Al. But I still say what ended his career essentially as Arsenal women manager was the defensive mistakes that had seemed to have crept in from nowhere. And you look at some of the marking in sort of Bayern Munich, but to have such a settled defence, to allow Katie McCabe to bomb down the left-hand side. I love that back heel to Mariona. That was just a bit of the audacity that Arsenal have I don't want to say, got back, because I feel like we're almost pinning everything on Renee Slegers, any good bit of play. But, the fact that she's always got that swagger, I thought that was a real highlight on a difficult night at times. But the defence, another clean sheet for Williamson and Catley. And again, Wubben-Moy, Cadena, sort of unused substitutes, keeping them out of the side. And, I think we can almost talk about some of the top performers under Renee. Steph Catley and Leah Williamson have got to be right up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of, with Steph Catley, we talked about this so much. We've talked about the fact that Arsenal maybe were missing that left-footed centre-back. And we've seen, I think, glimpses of what Steph Catley, had. And last season, I always reflect back to that game against Leicester at the Emirates, because I think that was an example of exactly, the kind of player that she is. She's extremely versatile. She will pretty much do anything that you ask her to do, a bit like Katie McCabe, who said that she'd play any position as well. So it's great to have that. And obviously, I think her and Leah complement each other extremely well. And I also think that having played Steph, we've actually brought out a lot more of the confident side of Leah Williamson. That's just, defensively tonight, she was on it completely, in my opinion. She won the aerial duels, she won just normal duels. The only thing that I could criticise her for was for missing that header in front of goal, but that might be a little bit harsh. But I think in terms of having that back four, which obviously there's going to be issues with rotation. I was thinking today, if we lose Emily Fox to injury, God forbid, what will we do? But it's having that back line that's allowed, the strengths of certain players to excel. Emily Fox to get forward, Katie McCabe exceptional tonight, and obviously Leah stepping in and having that freedom to break, especially breaking low blocks down. I think that's helped us so much in doing that. It's having a confident Williamson stepping into midfield and really just breaking teams down and linking up with other players extremely well.
Well, do keep your comments coming in. We've had a few coming in. Robin saying Juve really turned up. Thank God for Lena. And I'd agree with that. I think we talked a lot going into last week in terms of how good Juve have been in domestic football in terms of clean sheets. I think they came into the game last week in a good run of clean sheets. They made 9 changes from their league game on the weekend. So as you said, they put a lot of resources and effort into this game. They brought a few fans over as well, and I think they will feel frustrated. They had a few chances, a really, really good save from Daphne Van Domselaar when Caruso got that effort away. She's to get down low to her far post. But, as we say, not too much to talk about, sort of skimming through the player ratings. And Mariona Caldente, an interesting one for me, because I feel like at the start of her Arsenal career, when she was finding her feet, she's maybe drifted in and out of games, but her and Ford, one thing that stuck out for me was how eager they were to get back and help out defend in the first half. I think they both made sort of interceptions almost by their own corner flag, and that was really impressive, really good to see.
Yeah, I think Mariona Caldente is an interesting one. One thing I do think is she stays in games, and she sort of comes in and out at times, but I was looking towards sort of the end of the game and she was still making everything happen in terms of making sure that Arsenal kept possession and sort of getting forward, but also sort of playing into the corner flag, I thought, a little bit. But it's those kind of things that I think make or break Arsenal's results, getting back to defend, being solid in that sense. And also just the work rate is huge from a player like her. We talked about experience in the Champions League, and that definitely plays into that. She's had a lot, obviously, with Barca. But I think, in terms of Mariana Caldente, it's always an interesting one. I think she links up really well. I think about that Katie McCabe flick on for her as well. And I thought the difference from that Ford chance where she pulled it across and Russo wasn't there to when Mariona pulled it back for Marlon, who was in the perfect position. So it's those key decisive moments I think she really does get right a lot of the time. And I think that does make a huge difference in the way that Arsenal play. And I actually think she links up extremely well with Katie McCabe. And that kind of goes, we talk a lot about Ford and McCabe, we talk about Fox and Ford, but we talk not so much about Mariona and McCabe, but I think there's definitely something there to work on. And I think that could be a huge strength of this team, to be honest.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tenacity there with Mariona and McCabe. We talked about that very early on in her Arsenal days, actually, when we were analysing those qualifiers. Let's come to Ryan and Hannah Butler, who said, any subs you felt was strange, felt Ford was stronger in the second half and then was subbed off. And yeah, I'm not sure Mead offered a lot, to be fair. There wasn't a lot of time on the ball for her. And 170 Gunner saying Marnham should not start games, which I feel is a bit harsh tonight because if she sticks one of those efforts away, I mean, the second one was very close, but obviously Arsenal do have those options. And still, we're waiting for a little bit more of Rosa Kafaji, aren't we? She was restricted to 2 minutes at the end. And it's one of those things where the difference between a Champions League group stage and a Conti Cup group stage just means your team selections have to be spot on every time you go out in the Champions League. And I think Arsenal will continue to push on in this competition, to be honest, because you want that advantage of finishing top of the group and then potentially taking on a weaker opponent. But just to answer this question then, any strange substitutes? For me, Ford didn't work, but then you do have to rotate, mid-game, and Renee Slegers has done that well. I don't think many people really can question her game management, but maybe a couple of different talking points this evening.
Yeah, I'm with you a little bit on the Mead one. For me, I would have, in terms of subs that I felt were strange that weren't made. Also, I do think that midfield, obviously, I think Little came off towards when Leovaldi went down. I would have maybe looked. Yeah, I would have maybe looked potentially this was a game, to break down in the last sort of 10, 20, 15, 20 minutes. Kyra Cooney-Cross maybe could have been a shout. Obviously, we've seen her do a lot of that. I thought she did extremely well against Spurs as well in that sense. But yeah, Mead is an interesting one. I actually thought the Blackstenian substitution worked extremely well because I think she was able to the balls that were going in behind were working. She just couldn't time that run. I think there was 3 instances, 2 were offside, and I think 1 obviously was saved. So I do think that was obviously a huge, strength to Arsenal in terms of the substitutions that were made. Ford, for me, I don't think did extremely well tonight. There was one moment where I thought she, took on a player, but apart from that, I think she was a little bit off it in terms of the players that I would say maybe weren't at their best tonight. Marnham as well, obviously, yeah, I do. But I think Marnham's obviously been quite strong in general in recent games. I think it would have. I said the same thing. If we hadn't have started Marnham, we'd probably have thought we should have started Marnham in this game. So you never really know kind of how that's going to go. But if she, like you said, I think if she finished that chance, it would have been a different story because I do think she was involved in a lot of what Arsenal were trying to do. And she has been, we've seen that in every single game recently. She's been actively involved, whether that's before the goal is scored or even scoring the goal. So I think, interesting substitutions. And maybe for me, Kafaji needs more game time. I called for Kafaji quite early on in this game because I thought there would be opportunity for her to take players on and create space, and that's what we kind of needed to do to break Juventus down. So I do think that would have worked, but I do think it's unfair to put her into these games, giving her five minutes to do something. You can rarely judge a player off that, can you? I mean, you wouldn't even have put that in your player ratings, probably little of the time on the pitch.
The interesting one for her is almost, you talk about Kyra, and I was thinking the exact same in terms of you go like for like if you bring a Cooney-Cross on for Little, whereas Kafaji, you're almost bringing on an attacking player to close out the game. And, I like a part of that selection in the fact that she's thinking, keep the ball towards the corner flag, take defenders on, and, Blackstenius almost gets a second, doesn't she? So, it was an interesting moment in the game. We're going to do about 10 more minutes on this instant reaction stream, and we're going to ask the question that's been asked for a while now: should Renee Slegers continue on as Arsenal head coach? First question, Daisy, I want to ask you is: has this game, obviously we've seen her in for the 5 games in this block of fixtures after taking charge of the Vålerenga win and the win away to West Ham. How much has this game perhaps impacted your opinion, or has it not really at all?
No, it hasn't. I think it's sort of solidified really. I mean, I spoke on the recent podcast episode. I'm a huge fan of what she's done, and I think we talked about confidence. We talked about bringing, that morale back in the squad. We've also seen performances defensively. We've been solid. We've scored goals. I'm going to just keep listing reasons why she should stay, but I do think, obviously, in terms of the season, how I look at it is I think we already dropped too many points at the start of the season to really be considering the title. The way that Chelsea have been performing, the way that City have had their moments. Why not continue with a coach who is now building something to then come in and disrupt that rhythm and ask these players to do it all over again is tough. I would see her out to the end of the season because who knows what could happen in that time period. It makes it, for me, it's the disruption that I'm not a fan of. I don't think that would be good for the players, what we're building here. And I think it'd be harsh in all truth. This is not an easy thing to do, not an easy task. She coached under Jonas and she's come in and she's performed really well. She's done everything that we could have wanted. We played good football. I'd love to hear the other side of the argument, really, because I think that is, for me, it's quite an easy decision. I'm a bit baffled why the club would be debating this, and I know there was things circulating about what she was like as a person in terms of how she got sort of the right character for the job and things like that. But I think performances on the pitch, morale in the squad. Yeah, for me, I'm answering the question already. For me, she should continue, and definitely until the end of the season, and then obviously review that again, especially with options being there either as well for head coaches. We don't exactly have a lot to choose from, do we?
And also, I think there'll be a part of her that's thought, I've got us back into a decent position in the league. I've got us through into the quarterfinals because obviously Jonas lost his only Champions League group game in charge. So she's got Arsenal through. She's got Arsenal back into a decent place in the league. And there's probably a part of her that thinks that if the job is on the table, she's got a bit of unfinished business. She's got the club into a decent position in the Champions League. We've seen before, only 2 seasons ago, how much a Champions League run can actually distract from, a difficult league campaign. And it does look like Chelsea are running away with it at the moment. And perhaps City will drop off a little bit more. And then obviously, you do want to be battling to stay in the Champions League for next season through the WSL. But I think that looking at how the league's splitting apart already, I think Arsenal should be okay. United are going to lead a lot of improvement to really challenge Arsenal for that 3rd place spot. For me, if they still believe, an outstanding candidate is out there, I think getting them in now, and I still think the season can be, it's a decent position for someone to come in and pick up from where Renee Slegers has left off. And if that's Renee or if that's someone else coming in, I think the fact she has got the morale back, you're going to be quite a bad manager to come in and sort of reverse some of the good work that she's done. So I don't think whoever comes in is going to change too much straight away, because she has built them this platform now. They're unbeaten under her. As I've said constantly, this is going to be right at the top of her CV in terms of future managerial jobs. I hope she stays on, but the club have liked her for a while. She signed a new 2-year contract, I think, earlier this year. And, ever since she took the job, the club have had her on their list, basically, of candidates to take the job full time. Whether it is on a long-term contract, the feeling is that's probably not likely. And I do think giving her till the end of the season, I don't think there's much they're going to lose, from that. Whereas you could lose quite a lot by bringing someone in now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just reading that comment, and I think that obviously I haven't played into that too much. But the pressure, obviously, that's a huge factor. That say with Arsenal, obviously going, like you say, going and chasing that Champions League spot, in the league and trying to get as far up the table as they can, even if you don't catch Chelsea. Obviously, going into the Champions League quarterfinals, wanting more from the cup competitions. She's got a lot left to play for, despite this difficult start that she's obviously had to overcome. So I do think that is a very good point. What happens when we get to those tough games? Has she got that ability to step up and really take Arsenal all the way? I think it's hard to tell right now. it's a really hard thing to predict in general when we've obviously only seen her for those 7 games. We don't know what she's like too much yet. It's very hard to judge that at this point, but I'm with you. I think to the end of the season is a very fair deal. I think it would be too harsh to sort of say you've won all 7, you couldn't have done better, but unfortunately, you're not in for the job. So I think to offer it to her, and the real plot twist here would be that she doesn't take it as well.
Yeah.
So that was that option.
Yeah. She's watching this and going, "You lot have no idea."
Yeah.
Potentially, but I think when you've done 7 games in a row, and obviously, it's not going to have been easy for her, and she's probably made it look easy at times because she comes across as very relaxed and very calm. She's dealt with the media really, really efficiently, and I've been impressed with that. But perhaps there is a part of her, she's still only young as well, and maybe thinks, I'll come back to this at a later date. I've enjoyed it for the meantime, but it is a lot of pressure. Obviously, she dealt with the fallout of Jonas Eideval. I'm imagine that the first couple of weeks must have been really, really difficult and a few sleepless nights, and I'm sure that that will have got a lot easier. One thing I would say about the big games is that Jonas was known for a while as a big game manager. Until the start of last season, we praised him a lot, didn't we, in terms of when he would go up against some of the big sides, and then the opposite was that we were dropping points against the smaller teams. And a praise for Renee has been the fact that she's gone to Spurs and West Ham, where we lost last season, and been able to right some of those wrongs. So it's quite interesting because we're not going to face a lot of big games in the WSL. They're obviously crucial, and almost one big game can equate to sort of how many points you could pick up in 2 or 3 of the smaller games, because just because of the nature of the league and how fine the margins are. But I feel like tonight's a big game. Winning away to Juventus is a big game. Winning at Tottenham, where you lost last season, and Juventus tactically was so much better tonight as well. And you're not always going to win pretty every game, because I feel like coming into tonight, they were 3 very, very easy on the eye performances. They were very good. Tonight was never going to be the same. You're coming up against Italian opposition, which traditionally you're going to get a hard time, and the substitutes again coming on, and just great to see Lena Hurtig back as well. Shout out to Evan, who said, "My first live, let's go Gooners." A great night for Arsenal. And the Myth 67 said 100% yes. And that's one thing I've said for a while now, is that the fans, I think, I want to say 85, 90% of the fans, if not more, have said, give it to Renee until the end of the season. And the club is surely aware of that as well, because they're singing her name.
Yeah, and the club, maybe we won't get too into this again, but maybe the club's got some making up to do after the incident that we spoke about in the last episode. But yeah, I mean, the fans play such a huge part. We talked about this a slight little bit. Obviously, we didn't go too much into it in the last episode, but I do think the fans play a huge part. We've got behind her. We want her to stay. It's not just that, is it? It's not just that we like her. She's proven herself, I think. And you're right, these are big games. A derby is a big game, away as well. You're coming off. I think it would be really interesting to go into those big games. If we get there, in the Champions League, in the WSL, we want to go far in the cup. I don't want to be repetitive, but it would be really interesting to see how she would perform. And yeah, I'm all there, and I think a lot of people are too. And I would be really interested to see what she could do the remainder of the season. I love that comment. Sorry.
The mojo, the magic, and the tactics. Yeah, and I think that's it. I think it's very easy. I was writing a column earlier actually, and almost saying how a lot of the media almost framed Jonas's resignation as all the pressure got to him. It's because Arsenal have got such a large fan base. People, I think, have almost overlooked the tactics under Jonas Eideval and the confidence in the players dropping. Not whether the dressing room was lost or not, you still don't want to speculate. But you look at, again, we talk about how players have come out publicly and spoke in favour of Renee Slegers. All of them have said they want her to stay on in some capacity. So obviously the smoothest transition going forward is going to be for her to stay in the job. And I think what we do know is what Arsenal players want from this next manager. I think they've made that quite clear in some of these interviews, almost hinting at the club and saying we need somebody who's going to not put an arm around our shoulder, but we want to feel confident. And, that can be a tactic in itself, knowing when you get the ball, you can have the freedom to do what Katie McCabe did and slip a back heel down the line without, the risk of actually thinking, I don't want to do it because I'm going to get shouted at, or, having to constantly feel stuck to one position, where you see someone like Emily Fox, who was inverting into midfield, and, some of the different things that we're seeing. And you wrote about it the other day, because I think people have almost underestimated what Renee has done tactically, because let's not forget, she had 2 years at Rosengard before. She won a lot with them. So she probably is more tactically aware than maybe we give her credit for.
Yeah, I do think maybe we're downplaying that in a way. I think obviously we've made huge adjustments, huge improvements. I think we've talked about so much individual players getting better, improving. That's what we want to see. We want to see players scoring. We want to see better defensive shifts. We want to, really, I think we just need to back her long term and see where we go with that. I think she's proven herself, but also I think there's still more to come from Renee. I really do. And it's even better when it's a character that I think the players like and the fans like, because as a club like Arsenal, when you get that wrong, you see what happens. We saw that obviously, as much as it was part tactics, we saw what happens when the I'm going to say the fans, because I can't say that the players did, as a fact, but it did seem in some ways that, the dressing room was kind of slipping away, and it seems that she's brought that back. She's got a little bit of everything, I think. She seems quite, stern when she needs to be, but she also seems like she gives them the ability to flourish in their roles. And I think that was clear, bringing Emily Fox into that press conference. She was praising Renee in so many ways and saying that she wanted her to stay. So it's obviously, that's a huge sort of sign in terms of how it's going behind the scenes. And we can't always speculate, but we've had a lot of signs, haven't we, of how it's been.
Well, last chance to get some of your comments in. Do let us know your opinions on Renee Slegers or any questions you want to ask, because we are both up for going to bed in a minute. It's been a long day, and that wasn't the most enjoyable game, perhaps, to cover. But I would agree with you, actually, in that she seems very level-headed. And, sometimes you watch Jonas Eidevall's outburst towards the fourth official, and, some of the refereeing decisions today probably, could have elicited a similar reaction. But I think she does just seem very calm, very composed, and I think obviously outwardly she seems like that, and the press conferences and how she is on the touchline. I was almost a bit critical of her at first in terms of how little instruction maybe she would issue from the sidelines, and I think she's probably improved in that aspect as she's gone along with it. But yeah. I think definitely from a player's perspective and from a fan's perspective, they're on side. So it'll be very interesting to see what the club do. Rachel said bringing someone new in mid-season when we're winning would be mad. And I think that's a really good point, in that if Renee was the permanent manager, you wouldn't sack her. Yeah. So it's almost like, why do you make that decision if she's happy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that just sums it up. Exactly what we've said. It's disrupting the rhythm, and also I think it's incredibly harsh. The only way that I think that she shouldn't get the job is if she doesn't want it. And like you say, that might be a case of stepping away, it being too much for her, going and getting that, she, like you say, she's proven herself now, and be surprised if a club wouldn't be interested if Arsenal aren't for any reason, or she doesn't choose to take that job. So the only, the only outcome that I think really is if she chooses not to take the job.
There we go. I think we wait till the end of the season, reassess right now. She's doing so well. She is winning. She has confidence in the girls. And I think the international break will be good for her as well, and her backroom staff as well, and to actually take a minute and just reflect for a minute about everything they've gone through, because she's talked so much about being in the moment, and maybe just a few days now to go away for a little while and reflect. And, maybe the club have said to her, take a few days and decide if you want it. Potentially that's the conversation going on, and if it is up to her. Final comment then, unless any more go in, have to give it the end of the season now. After that, who knows? If they can get the manager they want in the summer, then great. But Renee is a good candidate for it permanently now, in my opinion. That's the thing. Arsenal almost can't lose with keeping her on board, because I think even if the season goes terribly wrong now, you act quickly to get someone in. And I don't think the fans are going to criticize and say, well, you should have got someone in now, because the opinions are very, very strong at the moment. And, judging by the comments, judging from the fans we've spoken to, and, you've been in the away end singing her name, it seems the fan base, is very, very united after quite a few months of being divided.
Yes, absolutely. And you saying that with the results and it all going terribly wrong, I hope this doesn't come back to bite us. There can't be a podcast episode in however many weeks' time where we're saying, why did we say that? I know it's all gone wrong, but I don't believe that. And I obviously think, like, there'd be a lot of a confidence boost in giving her the role as well. Like, think about that. Obviously, during the international break, everyone's, her getting a little bit of time off and obviously thinking about what the club's going to do and things like that. But then coming back in and being given that job, after the way that she's performed I think it would be a huge confidence boost for her as well going into the rest of the season. So there's lots to play for. And I do think that she's the right person for me. But let's see what happens. Unfortunately, it's not up to us. Maybe they should start listening to us on these podcasts.
Yeah, someone will, I'm sure. I was talking to a friend the other day. There's a Peterborough United podcast, a rather popular one, and the chairman, I've been told, listens in every week. Oh, wow. And so they'll sort of say, we want to sign someone, and sometimes the chairman's gone, all right, yeah, we'll consider it. But yeah, not sure about Arsenal's influence, but you never know who's watching. The nice thing for this one is the last time we did an instant reaction was after the Bayern game, and basically our viewership were all Chelsea fans who are enjoying tuning in. So this has been much nicer to do it after a win. Arsenal were really made to work for it tonight, but they got it over the line in the end with Lena Hurtig. And talking about Renaissance stories, so good to see her back out there. Let's end on her, actually. So many sort of niggly injury problems, out for a while, and then having some time out of the game for personal reasons. She's welcomed a young child to the world. I think there's another one on the way as well. And she's back out there. She's back scoring goals, netted a winner. She's clearly very popular with the teammates and fans. And it's great. It's great to see that when not only the team are doing well as a whole, but when individuals who need these moments get them.
Yeah, I think this is the Arsenal that we've missed, isn't it? Like, we've seen obviously that so much in recent years, like how important it is that the players are all on the same side, that everyone's sort of got there's that family feel to the club. And I think that is solidified from the reception. I even, watched the end of the stream to see her, get her hugs at the end and everybody sort of praising her. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't be happier for her. I think there's so much potential there as well. We'll obviously see how that goes throughout the rest of the season. But I don't think there could have been a better goal scorer for me in that scenario. I think that was hugely deserved, and yeah, really, really good that we got the result as well.
Well, it finishes then. Arsenal women 1, Juventus 0. As we say, Arsenal through to the Champions League quarterfinals with 2 games to spare. We break now for the international window. We'll have plenty of coverage because there's loads of Arsenal involvement. You're at Wembley for England against USA, and I'll hopefully be at Bramall Lane for the Switzerland game. We'll be back next week with a podcast as well. So lots to talk about. But Renee Slegers has got the job done in this 5-game block. She's kept on winning, and Arsenal women in a much better position on the continent and domestically as well. Daisy, thanks for that. I hope you enjoyed the live stream. I hope everyone watching did as well, and we will chat next week.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in if you did, and for anyone who's watching on demand as well, can't forget that.
And finally as well, while I remember, Beyond the Pitch, your new website is out now. Can you just give people a link for that? Because there was a really good article on there earlier I read as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Representation in the media, and obviously we're happy to give you a plug there.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, you can view the website now, beyondthe-pitch.com, and Emmy's fantastic article, a really important topic as well, one that's obviously close to so many people's hearts in terms of that female representation. That's on the website, and all of the other articles will be on there very, very soon. So yeah, a little shout out there, but please go and check it out. It's hugely important in general for, sports journalism and for women in sport as well. So yeah, definitely check that out if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all for tuning in. If you're watching back, you can still leave a comment as well. I think this is going up as a recording. And as we say, we will see you next week for the podcast.